Julian Assange is finally free after years of incarceration in truly horrendous conditions. Julian Assange, of course, faced being extradited to the US and facing a lifetime of solitary confinement, the most extreme conditions imaginable for any individual to face. And that's due to his work exposing the crimes committed by the US state, terrible war crimes. I'm really delighted to be joined by Kristinn, who is the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks since 2018. Hey, Kristinn, how you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Firstly, just explain, how did he get freed?
Oh, it's a long process that's been brewing, mostly off radar for a very, very long time, and it sort of sped up this process after the extraordinary victory in the London court last month on May 20th, when the High Court actually issued Julian a leave to appeal his extradition, and then, of course, the issue in the focus was about press freedom and whether Julian could actually rely on First Amendment protection in his defense in the United States. So that's what the judges wanted to know. They did not get sufficient answers. So he was on that basis allowed to leave to appeal. But at this point, the onus was on the other side. It was a huge turnaround, a tidal turn in Julian's case. And in my opinion, there's no doubt that was one of the things that pushed the thing in the right direction. The communication between the negotiating party got quicker, and we are here 1 month later with Julian en route to freedom.
For a little refresher, because it's gone on for so long.
Yeah.
Just speak through the crimes, the sorts of crimes that were exposed by WikiLeaks and why it was so important journalistically, but also, I suppose, people are seeing now some of the worst crimes being committed in the 21st century, thanks to the brilliant work of Palestinian journalists, and that's been made more easy because of technology and how things have changed. But just explain, this was years ago, of course, when that was harder to do. What happened, and what was he basically? Why did they want him banged up?
Well, what Julian did and what we did in WikiLeaks in 2010 and 11 was reveal the war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq, the horrible situation which led to the incarceration and the situation in Guantanamo Bay, and of course then this cache of diplomatic cables from all corners of the world was extremely informative, in some instances exposing corruption and war crimes on those places. It was the biggest leak in military history. It was the biggest leak in diplomatic history. It was, a milestone in our contemporary journalistic history, and it set an example for other whistleblowers to come forth, like Snowden in 2013. It set the tone for other organizations to partly copy the model of cross-border cooperation between a lot of media organizations, etc. So it will be recognized how important it was. But the stories were absolutely stunning in their scope and in their depth and the nature. The documents are still there, and they will be there forever. And one of the good things that I sort of have makes me feel good about this project is the fact that it is still being used as a basis of stories and revelations. And it's being used in international court cases. It's accepted as valid documents to be submitted in human rights cases, cases of environmental nature, etc. So the public interest value is beyond any doubt.
And it strikes me why this is so important is many of the crimes that are committed by US forces, for example, in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the rest, there's been a failure. I mean, many Western media outlets have often showed a lack of curiosity in any case in examining those crimes. And even though, obviously, in the end, the vast majority of people think the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were a catastrophe, it was too late in terms of the crimes that were committed. if people knew more about the crimes that actually committed in their name, then they would be less likely to happen in the first place.
Yes, one would assume so, and that is what we as journalists always strive for, to get the truth to the surface. And the end result, of course, is justice. That is, we shouldn't shy away from that duty. But secondary is of course just we need to be witnesses to what is going on for future generations to go back on, and these documents are going to be there. They will be there, yes, you would have wanted to see more justice brought to those victims of the horrors of the war. Just to reflect back on the iconic now collateral murder video, which I was very personally big part of in that project. A murder in any book, a slaughter of innocent civilians and children being maimed and made fatherless in this video, and no one has been brought to justice in that case. And we have all these examples sort of pile up, and where there is still impunity for those who committed the crimes, but there's been relentless persecution against those who not only were whistleblowers, but also, in the case of Julian, publishers and journalists who took on the role of bringing this to the people.
And that's what remains a perverse truth, isn't it? That if you try and expose these crimes, then you face persecution. But if you are responsible for these crimes, you're a moderate, respectable statesman, the likes of George W. Bush, rehabilitated, including by various liberal Americans, because he doesn't tweet in a vulgar way like Donald Trump, passes sweets to Obama's partner, and then everyone coos over it. Those responsible for these crimes, there's no justice for them.
No, that's a worrying part, but we make this very clear, and now everybody knows it. We can just discuss it in this context, like you are presenting it, Owen, because we have the information, we have the base, and that is creating a venue for the fight for justice, and people at some point need to be patient and push things forward. But this is the nature of our society. It speaks volume about what the world we live in, and it's not exactly a very sort of promising and bright picture that we were faced with.
I just want to just briefly about the conditions that he was held under in Belmarsh and the impact of that, and what the conditions would have been if he had been extradited to the United States.
Well, in Belmarsh prison, it's a maximum security prison. It's the harshest condition you could find in the United Kingdom. Basically, in 23 hours a day in isolation, and has very limited opportunity to have a communication with other inmates or do anything, any recreational thing, or so it's a form of torture, of course. In the maximum security prison in the United States, it's even harsher, and that is why, of course, in the first instance when he was fighting extradition, the judge ruled in his favor because of his state of mind and the conditions that he would most likely face. He was at high risk of suicide. Now, that is so that was a question. Resisting extradition was a question about life and death, and just imagine, it's common you can sit in 2 to 3 years in pre-trial condition, which is even worse than when it comes to serving a sentence. So it's horrible. It was horrible in Belmarsh prison, probably even worse on the US side.
Just finally, I mean, is there a fear that, notwithstanding the fact he's been freed, and obviously everyone there and your whole campaign will be absolutely rejoiced, not least, of course, his partner, Stella, that this will still be a deterrence, that many who will want to be whistleblowers and people exposing terrible crimes, they will look at this and fear the consequences of doing so? And what would your words be in that kind of context?
Well, I think the deterrence is already in place, and we've seen a signal of that. There's no doubt in my mind that people have been thinking twice in the past whether it's they can risk everything in a sense. Looking at Julian, and I'm talking about journalists here, not just whistleblower, but also journalists, because he is the first journalist who is being persecuted to the end of the earth for his job. So the deterrence is there. What will be the residue? And you say he's free. Yes, he's free from Belmarsh prison. He's still in transit. He still has to come into U.S. territory. Still, things have not been finalized. So, and I will not sigh in relief until he leaves the United States formally and flies over to Australia. So, but this is something for journalists to fight for. I think, and I hope that his freedom now is a signal that that will be a tidal turn, and we actually start fighting back for the journalistic rights and fight for the respect that journalism needs to have in our society, and that also signals, I believe, a demand for introspection by journalists about their role and their duties, because we have to think about this as a duty as well when you take on the job, and you have certain privileges as a journalist, but there's a duty that comes with it. So, I mean, I may be overly optimistic, but this, I hope, is the turning of the tide. And my God, it's about time, not just for Julian, but journalism is all over the world is under attack on all fronts. They're being killed in higher numbers than ever before, incarcerated in more numbers than we've seen before, and attacked by governments, both in states that are democratic on the surface and other states that are less democratic. So that is where we need to join forces as journalists and fight for our future, for the good of those who we represent, the general public. And it's good to get Julian out there. He will be an extremely important addition to that fight. But of course, my main thought today is that is joy that he, as a friend, as well as colleague, is out and can join his family, his Stella and the boys, for the first time as a free man.
And obviously, I can't even imagine the jubilation, the sense of joy, relief felt by his loved ones, his family.
Yeah.
A very big moment for them, a big moment for you, and a huge vindication for the entire campaign. And let's hope that's the legacy. So please do share this video for those watching or listening on the podcast. Press like, subscribe, leave your comments as ever. But Kristinn, massive congratulations and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Howard.